Mike Dick.
That was a former coach of the Chicago Bears in the 1980s.
I hear he just hangs around the airport from time to time.
You know, this might not come as a surprise, but I really like Chicago deep dish. So if you stop by a Pizza Uno and just want to bring something back,
Giving out free samples.
yeah, it's nothing over. All right, yeah, nothing over $3 though, because then it's a bribe. So
It's only $4.29 our time. It's only $4.29. Keith didn't hit the hammer yet.
One of the few times I'm just waiting for 4:30 to hurry up and get here.
if I would have known we were all going to be ready, I could have planned some more jokes. All right, we got 4:30. We'll call a meeting to order. We're going to start with the Pledge of Allegiance, followed by a moment of silence.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And please join us in a moment of silence, and in the process, keep the family of Mike Clayton, our fallen treasurer, in your hopes, your prayers, and thoughts. Thank you. Thank you. Item 1 on the agenda is citizen concerns. These concerns are something that is not already on the agenda. Anything from anybody? Come on up.
Maria Runquist, 131 Norman Drive, Sioux City, Iowa. I'm here to give you a letter to you guys because I'm concerned with the new board of supervisors who is going to take the oath in January. So I'm concerned because I'm a taxpayer, community activist in the state of Iowa. Mr. Daniel Bittinger, a public official recently elected, hasn't paid his taxes since 2002 and 2014 in Medina County in Ohio. And it's just a personal matter. He has to do it if he wants to be a public official and he take the oath because it's a violation of the tax law that those who willfully and intentionally not comply with one legal responsibility.
Can I stop you there, Maria?
Yes.
So I dug into Dan's past myself before he ran for office to check into him. There is another man in the state of Ohio with the same name that did not pay his taxes from that time, but it's not the same guy. The Dan Bittinger that lives in Sioux City, Iowa, has never lived in Ohio. So you might want to dig in a little more and find out it's not the same guy. So.
Are you sure?
Yeah, I'm sure. Then you might want to, if you want to call him, I can give you his number and you can clarify, but I dug into that myself, and they are two different guys, and there's actually a lot more than two Dan Bittingers in America, so there's quite a few of them. However,
Okay.
I'm the only Keith Raddick out there, so if you hear a story, yeah, that's probably me.
Okay, well, thank you for clarification.
Yeah, no
Yeah,
problem.
I would like his phone number.
Sure, I know right
He
now.
actually just walked in the room, so you could
Oh,
probably
there
get
you
it
go.
from
Okay.
himself and make sure that if it's an accusation of that kind of magnitude, it'd probably be good to verify as well.
Okay.
Just my opinion.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. All right, anybody else to be heard?
I don't know if I've given this to you before. It's a letter from State Farm about the insurance with the pipelines. Anybody recognize this? I've given it to various people, so I don't know. Can I just hand it out to you
Yeah,
again?
sure thing.
Does that
I
work?
will
Okay.
We'll move to receive.
Second.
Motion by Raddick, second by Taylor.
It'll give you an idea of what we as landowners are facing to be covered by liability, and it's not great.
All right, all those in favor of receiving, say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed?
Can you repeat your name, please? I didn't catch the mic.
Gayle, Gayle,
Palmquist.
Okay, the other thing I wanted to talk about is something I read on the news this morning about the pipelines. There are several groups across the United States that are pushing for a moratorium, a federal moratorium on carbon dioxide pipelines. So PHMSA can get their things in order and get their regulations made before any of these pipelines start crossing our farmland. So, and I would suggest that maybe the Woodbury County Board consider a moratorium too. So we are clear that we don't want them starting before PHMSA has their rules made. Questions? I think maybe Dan forwarded that article to you. Did you get it forwarded today? Okay, read it, please. It's important. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other concerns not already on the agenda?
Good evening, gentlemen. Just wanted to formally introduce myself. My name is James Loomis. I've been elected as Woodbury County Attorney, and I just wanted to say that I look forward to working with most of you. Mr. Wright, obviously you will not be on the council, but I indeed look forward to working with all of you. Rocky, you will not be there either, but just wanted to introduce myself and let you know that I look forward to working with all of you. There are a number of issues that our office is facing that we need to address right away come January, but I look forward to that engagement process, and thank you for your time. Have a good evening.
You too, thank you. And it's unfortunate Matthew couldn't be here to meet you. All right, anything else? All right, moving on to item 2, approval of the agenda. I'll move it.
Second.
Motion by Raddick, second by Taylor. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Passes 5-0. Moving on to the consent agenda. Items 3 through 7 constitute a consent agenda of routine action items to be considered by one motion. Items pass unanimously unless a separate vote is requested by a board member. Item 3 is approval of the minutes of the November 29th, 2022 meeting. We got that date right this week. Thank you, Karen. Item 4, approval of claims. Item 5 from County Treasurer, approve refund request for overpayment of taxes for parcel 894716401030 in the amount of $22. Item 6 from Juvenile Detention, approval of juvenile detention service agreement between Woodbury County, Iowa and Omaha Nation, Nebraska. Item 7 from Human Resources. A is approval of memorandum of personnel transactions, and B is authorization to initiate hiring processes. Anybody to be heard for anything?
I'll move the consent agenda.
Second, motion by Taylor, second by Raddick. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Passes 5-0. Item 8 from Conservation, approval of University of Iowa Geological Survey to drill a monitoring well at Midway Park. Is that right? You look confused. That is the regular agenda. Just finished it? All right.
I'm waiting for the veterans, I'm sorry. You're moving really quick, Keith.
I know.
So,
You
Dan
just,
Heis-
you can just keep along right up here now. It's super easy.
Dan Heisel, Director of the Woodbury County Conservation Board. This is the approval, it's just the University of Iowa Geological Service approached us. They had a groundwater monitoring well just outside of Mobile in the secondary road ditch. That's gone bad and they needed a replacement. And they contacted us. This is in Midway Park, which is north, and it's out of the way, and it's not gonna affect us. It's a 4-inch pipe sticking out of the ground that will put protection around, and it'll be good for them, and so let's,
Put a little sign that says, "Don't trip on pipe."
We'll make sure it's safe.
Okay.
County attorney has looked at this agreement, and we had the changes made that Joshua did, that he recommended. And it's been approved and signed by my board, waiting for your approval. The reason it comes in front of you is because of one word that the University of Iowa put in there is owner. And since the supervisors take care of that, so I'm asking for your approval of this agreement.
I have one facetious request. It's the University of Iowa. Can we paint that pipe cardinal and gold? Like really, really good.
I'm an Iowa State grad, true and blue, and so that you never know that might happen. So I know the gentleman fairly well. He might get a kick out of it.
There
So.
you go.
I'd move approval of permission to enter property and authorization to drill the agreement for monitoring well at Midway Park.
I'll second as long as it's black and gold.
Half and half.
All right, any other discussion on that? All right, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? Passes 5-0.
Thank you.
Thank you. Item 9, secondary roads, approve the contract for gravel purchase with Hallett Materials for $2,100,000.
For our gravel road improvement project, while we're getting gravel a little bit cheaper out of our Little Sioux Park area, as Ben and I looked at this, Ben Kusler, my assistant, looking at long-term, this project could use up a significant portion of the county's gravel reserves. We were able to negotiate a price with Hallett to produce 1 year worth of material for the gravel road improvement project for just a quarter more per ton than this year's contract. I think what this does is it gives us some material that's in an area a little farther south, closer to some of the roads we're going to be hauling this material to. It helps us conserve some of our long-term gravel reserves. It doesn't use up quite as much in this one-time project to get our roads built back up. Once we get that done, we'll have a lot of years of maintaining our 960 miles of gravel roads, and it may be good not to use our whole natural resource there all at once on this one project. This is a significant cost reduction. Hallett had been charging us, they proposed $8.95 a ton when we rejected the contract in 2020. So this represents almost a $2 per ton savings. It represents, again, 1 year production. This will also allow us a little bit of time to work there in the Little Sioux pit and create some additional storage, get some of that material out of the area that they produced for us this year. We see this as a win-win toward the project, and I recommend that we contract with Hallett for 300,000 tons as part of our gravel road improvement project for $7 a ton.
And then budget-wise, this is coming out of which year?
This is coming out of the $10 million
Okay, the
special project that we have
for our
in
gravel
progress
project.
right now.
Okay.
Yeah. We're currently under contract for 300,000 tons of material out of Little Sioux. We're contracting for another 300,000 tons with our producer who's there working in that pit. So this will do about, this will bring us up to roughly 60% of what we were hoping to buy with that $10 million the board forwarded for the TIF program for gravel road improvement.
All right, I'll move the approval.
Second for discussion.
Motion by Raddick, second by Taylor. What do you got?
Mark, how do you differentiate this item and the next item in terms of, is it the scope of what it's
The
being?
other one is maintenance gravel.
Okay.
That's what we're buying for just our spot road applications and our continued maintenance for next year.
Okay,
This is a pile that's already been, the next item is for a pile that's already produced. This 300,000 tons will be new production. It'll be using the county's new gradation. The other material meets our older gradation, but would be good material for us. Typically, we buy between 90 and 100,000 tons just for our gravel stockpiles. So that's what the next item will be for, is for that material for our stockpile gravel locations.
And these were bid separately, is that correct?
That's correct,
Okay.
yes.
And so basically that is coming out of an annual budget versus the other was coming out of the 10 million.
Correct. The 55,000 tons is coming out of my secondary road budget for fiscal year 2023.
Okay.
And would you assume that eventually that's gonna go down as far as the maintenance, that once we build up to that 4 to 6 inch base, or is
No.
that, no? Okay,
Once we get done, I think we really have to start,
Maybe increasing it so you meet the needs of the annual
right,
maintenance.
we don't want to get to, in 35 years down the line, have to do what we're doing right now again. You know, over the years, I think I laid all this out in a memo to the board when we undertook this $10 million gravel road improvement project, that from 1985 on, we were reducing the amount we were putting down in maintenance. In those years, we saw ourselves go from a 7 to 8 inch thick gravel base down to where we've only got 2 or 3 out there. So once we get these roads built back up, we're gonna be needing to look at about 150 to 200 tons of gravel per mile to keep those roads in good condition into the future. You know, one of the things we had looked at is at the minimum secondary road levy in those future years, once CF Industries is paying their full tax burden, there'll be money to help us do that. In those interim years, until they come on board, we're probably gonna have to ask the board for more money once this project is done, so that we maintain our investment out there and we don't see that 30-year decline in the quality of our gravel roads. I really think that we need to make sure that once we get the roads built back up, that we don't allow them to fall into the state that they're in currently.
thank you.
We'll have help with that, of course, but you know, there will be that interim period there until that comes fully online in 2036, where we might have to be asking for some more money to maintain what we're building now.
Well, we got a motion and a second. Any other questions? All right, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? Passes 5-0. So item B is approve the contract gravel purchase with Halla Materials for $412,500. I'll move that.
Second.
I'll go motion by Radig, second by DeWitt. And we've kind of already had the discussion on that, so any other questions? And all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? Passes 5-0. Moving on to 9C is approve the project agreement for project Perrin 179 and Perrin 180 and direct the chair to sign said agreement.
This agreement was with the Iowa Department of Transportation for work on county roads in conjunction with the Highway 20 improvement project. DOT is improving Highway 20 from the interchange at 20 and 75 east to the Whiskey Creek Bridge, which is just east of the northbound Carroll Avenue stretch in Woodbury County. The work included here is, I believe we discussed this in the past, will be putting the 50-foot approach fillets on the roads as we've done on our gravel road system adjacent to the 4-lane Highway 20. That gives our blade operators a good place to be able to blend the gravel road surfacing into the highway without getting our motor graders out there on 4-lane 20. The additional thing we discussed is taking southbound Buchanan Avenue from Highway 20 to Grandy Drive and paving that. That goes along the front of the storage buildings that are out there on Buchanan Avenue. DOT is changing the grade of that road. They're raising that road along with Highway 20 in that area. Preliminary plans I saw were between 10 and 12 feet in that location. That area has always been very difficult to maintain. It's fairly heavily used. It's just shy of our dust treatment minimum ADT each year. But the opportunity to get that downhill coming into 20 paved and avoid all the problems we've had with washboard and erosion on that stretch. I think it's worth doing while we got the paving company in the area. The projected cost for doing the approach fillets and that paving on Highway 20 is $340,000. DOT is allowing us to pay that back over 3 years. Secondary road fund would pay for that out of our usual operating budget. It would become a part of our construction program beginning in fiscal year 2024. And I would propose we use all 3 years to pay it back.
That sounds like a drop in the bucket compared to what you could spend if you seal coat or did anything else, or dust control, and
Yes,
just out of the way, you know, maintenance of a road, so.
We've tried some different treatments on that road, and none of them have really been successful, because again, you know, you've got people accelerating, decelerating, going up that hill, coming off 20, and it tends to tear it up pretty quickly.
All right. Any other questions on this? All right. All those in favor say aye. Aye. We had a motion, didn't we? Oh,
Well,
okay,
I'd
sorry.
move
Okay. Motion by Taylor. I'll second by Radig, and now we'll actually vote. All in favor? Aye. Anyone opposed? Passes 5-0. Item D is discussion to amend the secondary road driveways and entrances policies to allow a second driveway on paved curb and gutter roads with minimum speed limits and limited access cul-de-sacs where access is limited by existing septic systems, buildings, limiting the usefulness of the property.
Forget about that one. A landowner on one of our dead-end paved roads placed an additional driveway without a permit on our adjacent to his lot. We allow one driveway per 10-acre residential lot in the rural area. We don't have a similar restriction on agricultural projects or businesses. We will allow them additional driveways. But each driveway becomes a point of conflict when you have through traffic on the road. Fewer points of conflict is a better thing from our perspective. Don's here, and I'm sure he'd like to have his side heard on this one as well. If there was ever a place where a second driveway could be allowed, paved road driveways on a curb and gutter street are much cheaper for the county in the long term. Where we have open ditches and we're building driveways with culverts, the county undertakes that once the property owner pays for that driveway to be built, we maintain it into perpetuity. So once it's in there, that's a long-term expense for us. At the current prices of culverts, even 24-inch culvert is over $30 a foot. So the average rural residential driveway in an open ditch area costs us roughly $1,200 just in pipe to repair and maintain when that pipe gets to the end of its useful life. Usually between 35 and 40 years, we'll have a rust out of that invert. That pipe will need to be replaced. We usually do that in the course of ditch cleaning work out there. So if you have multiple driveways serving the residential lots, you know, each one of those is a long-term expense for the county. It's one of the reasons that our policy adopted just one driveway for a 10-acre or smaller rural residential lot. You know, in most cases, a lot of these lots are only 250 feet wide. 2 driveways in that area, you know, taking up a total of 80 feet of that frontage is, you've got a lot of area in that ditch that's now blocked, that doesn't drain as well for snow removal and such. In the open ditch areas, I would really argue against any changes to our policy. When people have a rural acreage, there should be plenty of room to maneuver, to get back to accessory buildings, whatever they might have back there. In my opinion, I don't think we need to have more than one more than one residential drive for rural residents. On a curb and gutter road, there isn't a lot of expense to it. Either we put in a curb cut when we're paving it, or the curb cut is ground in. If it's done properly and done under permit usually, we allow them to grind that curb down so that it becomes a mountable surface. On a through street, again, you get to the point where you have additional points of conflict out there on the road, potential locations where an accident can occur. Particularly don't like U-drives where somebody can just whip in, whip out, back onto the road, maybe not paying adequate attention. On a through street, I have a little bit of hesitation even in a curb and gutter area, but there isn't the same level of sinking expense out there for the county where we have that long-term expense coming along to replace a culvert. Again, a curb cut costs us nothing. So if the board chose to make an exception in that, and none of you were on the board when this policy was put in place and signed. It had been the policy of the board before I got here that we had this 10-acre limitation. The board last affirmed that policy, I think it was in 2013 or 2014, with the one driveway per rural residential lot. I'd never looked at an exception on cul-de-sacs or dead-end roads until Don brought this up to me when we were out there visiting. Now, right now, he's been notified that he's in violation of the county policy, and it would be at his expense that he would have to repair that curb and gutter section out there. That's no small expense for him because it's not just, you don't just replace the curb, you have to replace that 30-inch pavement section that ties into that main pavement. You go out to where the nearest sod joint is, you take out that material and you replace it, building that curb back up. He requested an opportunity to come and talk to the board, and I'll let him speak for himself here in a minute. If the board did choose to make this type of an exception, again, this is one where we could make it where it would have a minimal traffic safety impact. This is one of the most frequent requests, though, that my department gets. And in 14 years, I've turned it down a lot of people that have rural residential lots that want that second driveway. Probably more of them are in open ditch roads than curb and gutter roads. Frankly, we don't have a lot of curb and gutter out there.
So would you say that you've turned down those curb and gutter requests within the last 5 years?
I've turned down every request for a second driveway.
So if it was
I mean,
the policy.
we have not made any exceptions to that policy in any portion of the county on any type of road. There are some that go back, and he pointed this out, that he's got a couple neighbors to the south, and I think that's in the backup material that he submitted. But, you know, most of that construction dates back. We can look back and see those in the aerial photos prior to 2000. All I can speak of is our policy from 2009 on, you know, the policy that I inherited and that I've administered since then. We haven't made any changes or exceptions to this policy.
This is an information and discussion item. Do you want to make any comments there about it?
Not a lot. I mean, my name is Don Ehrling. 3 Rose Lane is my address. I'm just outside the city limits, 2-acre lot. And the way my lot is situated, there is no access or no reasonable access to about 1/3 or so of my 2 acres, and I want to put up a Morton building to store my camper in. In preparation for that, I put in the second driveway. I've been backing it up over the curb because that's the only way to get in there. Didn't realize you couldn't do that. I think there are 12.
What was the address again?
3 Rose Lane. It's just up off a stone past the water tower, just
Okay.
before you get to. It's only 8 houses, dead end road, cul-de-sac. I'm the last one. There's no utilities. There's no. I put in a real nice paved approach, and I don't want to have to rip it out, obviously. and I wanna have access to that property, so. Had the discussion with Mark, and I understand if there was a safety concern or some reason why I couldn't keep that, but I understand the policies there, I didn't know that. But just trying to find a way to resolve this without.
So is the second cut up by that cul-de-sac then?
Pardon me?
Is the second cut up by the cul-de-sac?
Yes. Yeah, it's just shy of where the cul-de-sac turnaround circle is, yeah.
Okay,
There's a little garage back there if you're looking at the aerial, Keith,
yep.
and it's right just
Okay.
about straight west, isn't it, Don?
Just south of that tree line, where the cul-de-sac starts. It's
Kinda
actually-
most-
It actually shows up on Google Maps now, so the cul-de-sac's up here.
I guess it does.
Yeah, so it's, and I have pictures and if anybody, if you want more information, I mean, obviously, I have more.
Well, I'm willing to direct a change in the policy, or even just,
I guess that's
If
what
you
I'm looking for, is direction from the board as to whether they want to review this policy and have my office come up with some proposed language.
and, I mean, maybe if you don't feel like an entire policy needs changed, I mean, personally, I don't see an issue with, on a cul-de-sac dead-end type street. I mean, I don't see and it is curb and gutter. I don't know. I don't see an issue with it here, so. But, and of course, instances where you're gonna have to put culvert or drain pipe or anything in, there's obviously a significant cost to the county. To clarify, you said there's no cost to the county here. This situation, there isn't one,
Yeah.
but there is a cost if we did have to go out and cut a curb, if we were doing it,
Yeah,
but typically you'd have the homeowner do that.
When we go through the approval process on a curb and gutter road, we give them permission to cut the curb in that area. There are contractors, including the contractor Don used, that are capable of doing that work. And there's no problem with workmanship, but, it was done without permit. Had we had this discussion before, he would have been told no, right from the get-go.
Yeah, but then he
and
would have been
this
just
is-
driving up over the curb the rest of his life,
And again, if there was ever a place where an exception could be made, a dead-end curb and gutter road would be that location, because the traffic safety consequences are minimal. You don't have through traffic, there's no possibility of high-speed traffic. If they're going very fast past his house, they're in a cornfield. Now, the question would be is, do we want to just look at it from a point of expense, or does the board feel that our department should review it on other curb and gutter streets? I'm thinking about Nimrod, J Street, some of the ones that are down in the Browns Lake area. Stone Boulevard is one where I have had requests for. We have a portion of that road through there that's also curb and gutter, that we've had requests that have been denied in the past. When we make this change, I'm assuming you're going to hear from, or our department will hear from others. So it's a question of how we want to go forward from this day. Do we want to say, we'll allow 2 on curb and gutter streets, but not on open ditches? How does the board want us to adjust this?
Well, I'll take your recommendations myself,
Okay.
so.
I just have a question. I would rather have a policy that's, rather than granting an exception, so if you came back to the board and had some sort of language, whether it was on curb and gutter or when there's not an expense to the county. My only question is, one, have you denied one of these last or made it homeowner reverse course? Has it been a while?
We've gone out and dug one out in the past. That was probably
Recently?
2020, 2021.
Okay,
We've had to go out and take one out before.
okay. And the reason I ask, and this
But
may
I
be,
can also get a lot of phone calls requesting it, so most of the time, people do their homework.
Right.
They call us and they know that most people know they need to have a driveway permit. They call my office and they say, can I have a permit? I'll look at their lot and you know you're less than 5 acres here. We only allow 1 per residence. I'm trying to think, it was Jasper or Jewel where I had one of those here not very long ago, that this was an open ditch section, and we denied the second driveway. They put in an accessory building similar to what he wants to do, but there wasn't a reason they couldn't pull into the current driveway and drive around. They didn't have the issues that Don does with a lot where he's got his sewage line and leach field that are complications in using that existing entrance.
And I guess the only reason I raise that, certainly in this situation, I think it, we don't want to have a policy for no purpose. But if there's somebody that we made do something, let's say 6 months ago, and they say, well, wait a second, I just want to be careful in that. And
I haven't removed one or
Okay.
or done any enforcement action. It's all been denials
Okay.
of requests.
Okay,
So
that's
we
why
haven't
he's
had
here.
anything where we've done something similar where we have ordered him to, at this point, to tear it out and make the street and curb section whole again.
Well, when, if there was like an appeal process on an individual case-by-case type thing too, I think we'd probably see them all the time.
Yeah, the
So-
board would hear no end of input if there was an appeal process built into our policy.
I mean, it's good to have a blanket policy, but at the same time, there's always going to be some kind of exception or something that comes up.
Somebody's gonna want something extra.
Sure.
That would be
So-
I mean, we actually had one individual, and you probably know this property right on Highway 20 in Franklin. He split his lot, he wanted a second driveway, he split his lot in half through the subdivision process so he could have a second driveway off Franklin. They had roughly, do you remember, well, it was before you, I think, but I think that's roughly a 7-acre lot out there. They split it into 2 3.5-acre lots roughly, built that accessory building on the north line, that big red shed they've got there, so that they could have that second driveway to run a based-at-home trucking operation.
Well, do we have enough info for you as far as?
I think the guideline is to take a look at the curb and gutter and proposed language to the board for approval on the cul-de-sacs that are curb and gutter.
Sounds good. Anybody else? All right, thank you.
All right. I'll bring it back to the board in 2 to 3 weeks.
All right, item 10 from Community and Economic Development, Daniel Priestley. A, receive zoning commission recommendation for the 10/28/22 meeting and approve the final plat of the Zanley First Edition minor subdivision to Woodbury County, Iowa.
Good evening Supervisors, Dan Priestley. Furman E. Zonley is filed for a one-lot minor subdivision on parcel 8942-272-00001. This is basically a 2.43 acre piece, basically splitting the house off the ground. The zoning commission looked at the proposal, they find it in compliance and recommend it to the supervisors.
All right, so I pronounced it wrong, Zonley?
Zonley.
Okay. Well, I'll move to receive.
Second.
Motion by Raddick, second by DeWitt. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? Passes 5-0. Item B is accept and approve the final plat of the Zonley First Edition, a minor subdivision to Woodbury County, Iowa. I'll move.
Second.
Motion by Raddick, second by DeWitt. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? Passes 5-0. Item C is receive the zoning commission's recommendation and final report from November 28th, 2022 meeting about zoning ordinance text amendment concerning hazardous liquid pipelines. That's a big final report.
Do we need to receive this?
Yeah, that's what the motion is, or that's what the action item is.
Okay, and basically, last week, as I reported on the information item, the zoning commission did meet on the 28th, which was a week ago. Last Monday, they had a motion, it was passed 5-0 by the commission to stay with the existing process with the conditional use instead of going with the draft amendment ordinance proposal. And what the draft was originally was by staff to go with a 330 setback in agricultural preservation, agricultural, basically the residential areas, and 50-foot in the commercial and the industrial areas based on the emergency response guidebook. The report that was submitted before you basically is organized, of course, with the zoning commission minutes, their statement, as well as items that were received at the zoning commission meeting. And then there is stakeholder comments included, as well as a significant amount of information from the public there in the back of the report, as well as the staff recommendation report that I had referenced last week, as well as the proposed language that the commission had looked at.
Well, I'd move to receive the zoning commission's recommendation and final report from November 28, 2022.
Second?
Motion by Taylor, second by DeWitt. Any discussion? All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? Passes 5-0. Thank you. Some light reading. Item 11A, County Sheriff approved lease proposal between Woodbury County and Iowa Department of Public Safety at 1600 County Home Road, Sioux City, Iowa.
Quite a few months ago, Captain Garrett was approached by the Iowa State Patrol. They lost their garage, their ability to house their SWAT truck and trailer and vehicle that they needed. They approached us. We had some space in our large garage that we said that we could use. We're just gonna let them use it, and the state says, no, we have to pay for it. So that started the process of poor Josh Woodman conferring with the state on a very long contractual questions, and we got it hammered out. So we got approval to, Josh gave approval to sign the contract, and we're gonna charge, I don't know what the rate is, Willie? $3,600 a year for them to park, which it helps us too, because we can use the equipment if we need it. We can, it's close to us. I just saw the agenda item. I was going to ask, I'll probably have to bring it back to you, is we want to take this money and create our own line item for out at Prairie Hill. With that building being tore down, it's created some different things, and one of them was snow blowing across there. We asked Kenny if we could get a snow fence. Kenny doesn't have it in his budget. He doesn't have the time to do it. Thank goodness Mark Nara was nice enough to find us some fence and some fence posts, and chief deputy, 2 captains, and a lieutenant went out there and put up the snow fence. We would like to use that money in our own line item, so if stuff like that comes up, we can just bid it out or buy our own stuff instead of having to go beg, borrow, or steal.
I mean, technically, any money is gonna have to be budgeted. I mean, revenue still has to go into the budget.
Yeah, I would look at it like our room and board. Because
Right.
we have our own separate line item for what we create there.
Right, and I mean, it would make sense for any revenue there to contribute to maintenance of the facility, so.
I don't know if I need to bring a separate agenda item asking for that creation, Dennis, or?
I mean, technically, you would just budget it in there as maintenance. You just have that.
Do we have a line item right now for us out there?
We have Prairie Hills out there, a budget for Prairie Hills. We don't have a line item. We have to add the line items and funnel the money into that line item so they
Like,
can do what they need to do.
like for snow removal out there, where's that come out?
Our maintenance budget.
Okay,
It'd just be a budget amendment, put it in. Which we do in April, so go ahead.
Okay, whatever we need to do, just tell me what we need to do.
I'll cover it.
any questions on the lease agreement? I'll move it.
Second.
Motion by Raddick, second by DeWitt. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? Passes 5-0. Thank you. Item B, approve creating new jail sergeant, January 1st, 2023, and new jail lieutenant, March 1st of 2023.
Good evening. This is basically a continuation of our conversation last week that I didn't get these items specifically on last week's agenda. It would utilize the same spreadsheet that I gave you last week. What we're asking for is the ability to promote that. just for the sake of transparency for the public, the positions have already been approved to be created. They just weren't going to be created until June 1st. What we're asking for is to just create the sergeant position sometime around January 1st, so that we can get that sergeant trained a couple months under his or her belt, and then in March promote a sergeant to lieutenant. That way we're not leaving the shifts short a sergeant if we did them at the same time. And then promote that lieutenant in March, let them get a few months under their belt in that new capacity, so that when we start looking at the transition from the old facility into the new facility, we've got the proper supervision in place for all the people that are going to be hired, and that we can basically hit the ground running and take in hopefully as many new clients as we possibly can.
Visitors.
Yeah. Well, some yes, some aren't just visitors.
Sure.
Yes, I know what you mean.
So to clarify for the public, the board has already approved the creation of these positions. We're just expediting the process.
Yes.
From June instead to January and March.
Yes.
And the cost for these positions, we're not pulling out of anywhere. It's funds already allocated to your department that were saved somewhere else and funding these.
Yes. So what we've done over the course of the time is looking ahead, trying to anticipate the different moves. And when the thing got bumped back, as we talked about last week, we aren't hiring as many people as quickly, which is saving us a significant amount of money. And it will more than offset the costs of bumping these promotions up sooner. So we will still be saving the public. I can't remember. We looked at some new numbers, but it's somewhere around, I think, 20,000, some give or take. And there were some additional numbers, but I don't want to cloud the waters anymore. And we can, unless you think it's necessary, Michelle. But
And we're still anticipating September 23.
Yes, September 1st of 2023.
All right.
I would move item 11B.
Second. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? Passes 5-0.
Thank you all.
Thank you. I would just like to clarify the information again, because while we all know and what happened last week and the week before, not everybody pays attention to every single meeting. They may have just saw this one. So that's why we discuss everything. Item 12, Building Services, Kenny Schmitz and Board Administration, Dennis Butler, Capital Improvement, Financial Update. This is an informational item.
Kenny Schmitz, Building Services Director. I've got some handouts for you here. Some of them, the first one was in your actual package. That was in your backup material. That is the capital expenditures for the last 5 years. That's an Excel spreadsheet, and this is some backup information that goes into those Excel spreadsheets. And then this last handout that I'm going to give you is an actual handout that was taken, a projection, the numbers that were taken out of our Tyler encode system. And I'm providing those for you to give you an idea of what goes into tracking these capital expenditures and the checks and the balances that we have to make sure that we know the dollar amounts are correct, and we're doing all the procedures that need to be taken care of as far as auditing purposes and so on. So what we really have here is a 3-check system. The first handout I gave you is the CIPs. The second one is, and it's in an Excel spreadsheet that we keep. The second one is just to show you a screenshot of one project that's a chiller project, of the backup information that goes into that Excel spreadsheets, that's part of it. The last set of sheets are the Tyler encode sheets, the Tyler encode system that the county uses to input all of our expenses towards projects and CIPs. And just to give you a little bit of an idea of how we can look at a project, or if we need to look up a particular contract or a vendor associated with the contract, how that's done, and how that helps us keep track of those dollar amounts and make sure that we are not slipping or missing anything and everything is aligned the way it should be. Now, this also helps Dennis. We'll call him maybe the first or the fourth check, because he has to balance that when it's all said and done. And so after providing that information from here, I'll let Dennis take it over and give you a rough or a fine draft of where we're at on all the CIPs and expenses.
Okay, and the one that's in your packet, you have the CIP for 2021, you have CIP for 2022, and you have CIP for 2023. The ones in 2021 have to be spent within 2 years of the borrowings, because you're limited on a 24-month period. So in that fiscal year 21, we have 221,000 left over. In 2022 so far, we have 94,000 left over, second to the last column from the right. And then in your 23, that's still going because we have not borrowed the money. All the expenditures have been approved to 2023 because we had to do a resolution approving and prepay them for internal revenue service rules. So we have done that. There are more projects coming down the line here, which we do have probably close to $300,000, a little over that, for possible reallocation, so we don't have to borrow some of this money that's gonna be in 2023. So the key is, when we borrow the money, technically, we'd like to get it spent before we run into 2-year limits, because then we have to reallocate them. So with that said, and if there's something in 2021, we'd have to reallocate with new money to fund that if there is a need there. So that's where we're at, Jeremy. You requested us come back to the board. We kind of recap the CIP where we're at. That's the recap. We have about 310,000 left over to reallocate to. You go to fiscal year 23, you'll see in white there's several items that haven't come before the board yet, that will be coming to the board, various items. So we do have money on hand to fund those by reallocating money that has not been spent. And that'll just cut down our borrowing when we come into May to borrow the money for our 23 CIPs.
And you didn't see any, the reason you don't see 2019 and 2020 there is all those, or anything, any remainders unallocated on those 2 years were pushed forward and reallocated. You can see that if you look in the second page of the second handout that I gave you. It indicates 910121 chiller. That $413.39, that shows under 21 budget amendments. That is that reallocation, or the way that we are tracking those reallocations in our Excel spreadsheets.
So to make sure that I'm understanding this, so if they're not completely used within the 2 years, then they can't be pushed forward into a future year, is that
No.
correct?
They have to be reallocated through new money. The old money will go back into the pot for reallocation for other projects.
Okay. And when we initially do these CIP approvals during the budget time, we've asked for people to come back and get sort of reapproval, if that makes sense. Is that
Yes. Actually,
what
when
the
you
still?
approved the 23 fiscal year on now, we did actually look at all of them back there when we did the budget in January and February of 22. But you did not approve them, you just received them. And we make them come back each year during the fiscal year to actually get them approved by the board. Because things have changed so much, there's new ones, there's some that may not be needed, and there's some the board may not want to do. But we don't start the process till the end of April to borrow in May to close it out in June, so we have the money on hand. We're actually prepaying a lot of expenses that we haven't borrowed for, but the board has approved it to go ahead and we have it approved through the IRS regulations.
And you concur with that understanding, Kenny?
Yes, and actually, we are in the 2024 process. A few weeks ago, we sent out a request to department heads to turn in any requests that they had. The way that process works is I send an email out. Dennis is copied on the email. We ask everyone to fill out a form if they have a CIP request, and we provide a date to return that form. And then we combine all those requests. Dennis puts those in his packets to the board, and the board then reviews those, considers them, but they're not approved unless that department head comes back at a later date and asks for that approval. And again, there's been times when the board has decided we're not going to do this particular project for whatever particular reason it might be, mostly sometimes probably financial. But if there's usually a really an important need, the board has usually passed those in the past. But again, yes, the department head has to come back and ask for that approval.
And the reason we do that, and you don't have to approve them at the budget hearings, is we actually don't levy the money till the following fiscal year. So anything for fiscal year '23 won't be levied till '24. Anything that they're now collecting for '24 won't be levied till '25. So that's why we can sit there and kind of pick out what you want to do, and any new requests come up through the year, because we've had a few of them here and there.
This is really helpful. I appreciate the time you put into it.
Kenny, were these documents all in the homework?
I'm sorry?
Were these documents all in the homework that's available to the public, or should these be received for the minutes to be attached?
They probably should be received to be attached, because
Move
they
to
were not
receive.
all in the background.
Second.
Motion by DeWitt, second by Taylor to receive. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? Passes 5-0. All right, do we have anything else there for the good of the cause?
Nope.
Item 13 from Board Administration, approve the funding for furniture, fixture, equipment at the new Law Enforcement Center from Woodbury County's FY23 CIP in the amount of $941,000. You want to take her away?
Okay, the reason this is on there, because when we sit there and talking with Shane and Ronwick, the chair over there, and a couple board members, that it makes sense that the Board of Supervisors purchase the furniture, equipment, and fixtures out there at the new Law Enforcement Center, because actually it will be property of Woodbury County. The actual shell, the building, will be under the LEC ownership until the bonds are paid off. But in this case here, they do have this money budgeted in their overall budget, but it should really come out, and the lease should be amended where it comes back to Woodbury County to buy the furniture, fixture, and equipment that is needed out there. And right now, it's a cap of $941,000. Obviously, that could go up or down, we don't know. But this will also help the authority, because this is within their budget. We're taking it out of their budget. It frees up $941,000 in the budget. So at the end of the cycle, this whole project, money that's left over, and we're gonna spend the ARP money last, the last money to be spent, we have $10 million, which it can be reverted back to Woodbury County, in which we can use it any way, shape, or form, because it's the general deduction, standard deduction. So in this case here, if the county chooses, I'd recommend they do, we can pay it either through a CIP, which is a loan process, we pay interest, or we have funds available through ARPA funds. These expenditures do qualify under 3.4, the final rules for the ARPA fund spending. And that's where I'd recommend go through ARPA, amend the lease, which will take a little bit of time, and bring it back to the county ownership.
So I think the ARPA funding makes a whole lot of sense. Have we run that past UHY in terms of
Yes.
everybody's good?
Yes, we have done that, and you do have $2,167,000 available after revised last week's actions and taking a potential out that we couldn't spend it for. So we do have the funds there. It'll leave some money there for a potential of another project.
Would there have been any reason not to use it from
No.
ARPA? Okay.
No. Like I say, we'll have to get together with authority and the board and legal counsel, and probably legal counsel that we use in Des Moines, plus our legal counsel here for the board to amend this lease. And there are other items in the lease that's going to need amended, because there's other projects or other items such as budgets, things like that, and various things throughout the lease that need to be amended. Because the lease was written when this thing was first started. A lot of things have changed, the square footage, the dollar cost, a lot of things have changed in it. They're just, ministerial changes, but there's some, vital changes that need to be taking place. And they might want to address some here, because they came here too.
I assume the authority is good with this
Yes.
item? I would move the approval of the funding for FFE at the Law Enforcement Center from ARPA funding in the amount of $941,000.
Second?
Jeremy, you might want a contingent of amending the lease, because we need to amend the lease to make it totally proper.
Contingent upon amendment of the lease. If I can get a second to that amendment?
That is still seconded by me. Go ahead.
Okay, on the county side, he did review the lease agreements, and on the authority side, Jason Comiskey, approved the lease. So you got your two attorneys from each taxing body looking at it, made their changes. Joshua was fine with the change when we wrote the lease up, and so was Jason and the authority and the board. So it really needs to go to two different attorneys.
So this item about the county buying the furniture, Joshua did review that and did give his opinion. Joshua said the county could buy the furniture, but they can only buy the furniture after amending the lease. So Joshua did rule when we asked Joshua about this, it's probably been 2 to 3 months ago. So Joshua did give us an opinion. So we did ask this question of Joshua about the county buying the furniture. He said that could be done, but you would have to amend the lease for it to be able to happen.
And another reason it's kind of imperative that we get this action rolling here is that you got to order the furniture, and it may take a few months, and we hope we have it all by September 1st, or whenever we open the facility. So the ordering has to happen pretty soon. I think they have looked at some furniture, I believe.
Joe, so right now we were working with the state master contract for the authority because the authority's legal counsel said that was okay. Joshua's opinion was we had to write an RFP and it would have to be put out to 3 bids instead of utilizing the state contract. So with it going through the county, it will take a little bit longer. So this is something we need to hurry at.
So how quickly can the lease be amended, or is that the $1,000,000 question?
We'll call Jason tomorrow morning. I did leave a call. He did not return. I think he's out of the office today.
I mean, I think it's a salient point. If that takes 4 or 5, 6 weeks to amend the lease, then you're not gonna be able to purchase. But if we can get that process going quickly, then they can,
It should be pretty quick.
okay.
Because we'll just do that one thing, just switch We'll just move the language for the furnitures, fixtures, and equipment from the authority to the county. We won't worry about the rest of any other changes. We'll just do the one so that it doesn't take a long time.
That's going to be the easy part. The harder part probably is we're going to have to, the county is probably going to have to do a request for proposals on the furniture, which is a double-edged sword. We won't probably be able to use the state contracts, and so we might not get as good at pricing. And just to get a request for proposals is probably going to cost us some money. 10 to 15,000 probably. So it is a double-edged sword. It's been a while since we've talked to Joshua about it, but from what I remember him telling us several months back is we would probably have to send that out for an RFP if we did it, so.
Which part needs the RFP, the amendment to the contract, or the?
If we decided to purchase the furniture, if the county decided to purchase the furniture, we would have to go through an RFP process, which we wouldn't just fall directly under a state contract.
Okay, so
To make the purchase.
the authority wouldn't have to because it's being,
It wouldn't be the authority, it would be the county. We can do that process again, but that's, why I said that is going to take some time, so.
Has the LEC already gone through that step of the process?
They started that process and kind of stopped.
Okay, were there gonna be some additional costs realized as that process was brought to completion?
So we had just started to have our meetings that you have to programming meetings. We didn't actually have one. So right now, we have not, to my knowledge, have not incurred any cost yet. So we didn't start the RFP process because of the state master contract is different than, state master contract is everybody already bid these things out. So you already get the best price. They've already agreed with the state. It's a whole bidding process, and they say, it makes it so counties and other things can supposedly buy things quicker without going through the 3-bid process because it's already bid. Schools do the same thing. They have a state contract, so you can just pick your procurement person, you can just work with somebody so you don't have to go through this.
I don't know anything about that either.
It's like when you buy the cars for the sheriff's department or,
Yes.
anything. They already have a state minimum bid on Ford Explorer,
Yes.
the Challenger, or whatever
Yes.
else.
Is the motivation here to free up some flexibility with regard to that $950,000, $940,000?
Yes.
Is that kind of the end goal here?
That's part of the
By kind of
motivation.
switching gears and going a different
But the
direction?
second motivation is the authority really shouldn't probably own the furniture that's in the building. It should be owned and maintained by the county because it's the county's furniture and the county's people. So that, because the authority is a voluntary position, the authority shouldn't be the ones, the actual owners, when you talk about warranties and all the rest of the pieces and everything else. That should be given to Kenny's department, in my opinion, so that, because it's Woodbury County furniture, it should be Woodbury County furniture.
And then, of course, likewise, any, part of the agreement with the authority was the city's involvement. Anything that the
Yes.
city has involved, they can invest in whatever furniture or fixtures they would need for their positions in that
Yes.
building.
But I want to clarify something Kenny said. Is it going to be more expensive for the county to buy the furniture than it would have been for the LEC to buy the furniture and
That's a
fixtures?
question we can't answer.
We don't know.
We don't know.
We have no idea.
No.
And the 941 is just a number there that they had in their budget. If there's administrative costs to go through the bidding process, ARPA can cover that. So we do have money available if it goes over, but if it goes under, that's good too. We won't know until we bid it out.
Because if it's a wash, if it's the the final expenses are the same one way or the other, then I don't know that it's that big of a deal. But if it's more expensive for the county to buy the furniture, what prevents the LEC from just going with Plan A, finishing the process, and for the county to then buy the furniture and fixtures from the LEC?
And the
That'd
hope
be another
is-
way to do it.
And hope this money will come back to the county through that $10 million they may not spend because we're reducing their budget by $941,000. And that money will come back to Woodbury County after the project's done.
I see what you're saying, Justin. I just don't know if they do it under the master contract and then we bid it from them or buy it from them, and it kind of circumvents what we would have otherwise had to do with the RFP. That it won't be seen legally like we circumvented maybe. Does that make sense? Like we have to go through an RFP process. We had them do the master contract and then said, okay, we'll just go ahead and reimburse you. I'm no lawyer, but
Yeah,
I
and
just.
I actually get that statement too, where you don't want any accusation of impropriety as far as bidding out furniture or getting favoritism or anything, especially, I don't want that being, home furniture doesn't carry jail furniture as far as I know. I'm just saying this publicly so it can be known, all right? I mean, you guys are probably gonna, bid through some kind of office system specialist or somebody that bids this kind of stuff.
I don't know. Sometimes that mattress that we bought from you is pretty hard.
It's just to be said that, we want to follow the most open, transparent, public way to do this. And if the county's supposed to own it, we should probably bid it. That's the way I see it, so. I guess
Sounds like a
this
plan.
is an action item, so we don't have a motion or second, do we? Oh, we do, okay. It was, Taylor and Raddick, that's right. I just never announced it. Motion by Taylor, second by Raddick. Any other discussion on this? Any questions from the luxury lounge in the airport? Okay. All right, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? Passes 5-0. Item 14 is report on committee meetings. Nothing?
So this isn't really a committee, but I had a really good meeting, and Dennis, I might be calling on you to help speak, but in terms of the IJR, the Interstate Justification Report, and the interchange, it seems like it may be moving more quickly than we once thought. DOT's participation seems to have a value of $5 to $6 million in terms of design and so on. We met with the City of Sioux City staff, Sergeant Bluff's city staff, and then our county staff on an agreement if the City of Sioux City annexes or Sergeant Bluff annexes around that area and receives a significant economic development because of the interchange and annexes, then the county expense that was put forward originally would have seemed in some ways for naught. And so we just talked about some project agreement language that we could agree upon. And I don't know, Dennis, if you want to add any more in terms of some of the details that we got into.
No, and one of the things they said on annexation, anything west of I-29 would come to the City of Sioux City, anything west or east of I-29 would be Sergeant Bluff. Originally it was intended to be started in 27. I think they're trying to bump this up 2 years. So it's a project they feel the deems immediate and importance to get it done. It also helps us with our TIF project, using the Grow Woodbury County TIF revenue, because that expires fiscal year 36 or 37, but this would give us a 10-year option to do the loan through, do a bond issue. Doesn't require a vote of the people because it's road and economic development, and we can pay it off in 10 years. Not 20, it'll be 10 years, which is good.
So I think this is one, the IJR being approved and, maybe in our near lifetime coming to fruition, I think is a good example of city-county cooperation and our other communities as well. So hopefully we can keep bringing something to the table and before you as far as a project agreement between all the entities.
City, county, city, state,
Federal.
yeah, all friends. All right. You got anything? Nothing from the lounge there, Matthew? Well, come January, obviously, we're going to have some new committee assignments. One of them was SHIP. It was one that Rocky was just recently moved to. So, Dan, when you're sworn in, look forward to SHIP. It's going to be yours. Conference board, we had that meeting earlier today. We had a call in from Rocky. I was there. My de facto presence put me on the contract committee. So we'll be discussing that tomorrow. And of course, coming back for a contract here probably in the upcoming week for the new assessor who was hired today. Tyler Erickson, thank you for, I'm terrible with names. So that was what happened there today. Item 15, citizen concern round 2.
Hi there, Dan Bittinger, 2901 Sunset Circle, Supervisor-elect District 2. Just coming to the meeting, just heard, I just want to clarify, heard that I may have not paid some taxes in Ohio, so I just want to clarify it's not a embarrassment or not disgrading or not trying to point fingers or trying to publicly poke things, but I believe when things are addressed publicly, you address it publicly. If they're addressed privately, you address it privately with the person. And I'm not mad at anybody. I'm mad at Maria. I want to serve in the public, be completely open. Let me give my phone number, first of all, to everyone, 712-389-4405, 712-389-4405. So here's what happened. I am Daniel A. Bittinger II. I'm a second. My dad is Daniel A. Bittinger, born in 1948. My dad, my mother, and my brother, we lived in Ohio, in Medina County, Ohio. My parents filed for bankruptcy in 2002 and lost the family farm and acreage that we grew up on and remodeled. My dad was a hard worker, but in 2000, 2001, my dad's health got very sick. He had welder's-induced Parkinson's from serving in Vietnam. My dad was unable to work, and my father's not good management with money caused my parents to go into bankruptcy. And with that, there was 2 years of unpaid taxes on our acreage there, our 3.5 acres there in Medina County, Ohio. And so, thus, always, if you know me, I want to be clear with the public. Out of my parents' money issues has driven me to be a fiscal conservative, both personally, privately, and with my church and on every budget I've served on. And so, with that, my parents lost everything, had to move to Florida. And so that's what happened. So just for the public knows, and I'm not mad at anybody, and I feel free asking. Anybody can ask any questions, ask them. I would encourage anyone to call me, text me, meet me. I'll buy you coffee, I'll buy you lunch. I'll sit down and go through family histories, but I would just encourage all public people, anyone in the public and or on Woodbury County staff, if you have any questions, please come talk to me. But anyhow, that was what happened. So I'm Daniel A. Bittinger II. That was Daniel A. Bittinger. I've had loans denied. I've had banks question my personal finances. I've had loans for college, people being like, what in the world? Wait a minute, 2001, during my parents' bankruptcy, my college actually said, hey, we can't give you a loan because you have a house note that's not being paid in Ohio. And I said, well, I'm 21 years old, about to get married. How can I have a house note in Ohio? And so anyhow, that's what's going on. So just wanted to clarify for everyone.
So that is not you, and the
No,
public
sir.
accusation that was levied against you was not true. Is that correct?
That is correct, yes. And I
Okay,
can-
that's
I-
all, that's,
Sure.
I don't think you need to explain
Yeah.
any more than that. This
Yeah.
is a frequent flyer in
Right.
that department. Welcome to public service in Woodbury County, but I'm glad
Right, and I'm
that
not
you're
mad,
here.
right, and
Yeah.
I'm not mad at no one, no, and I think everyone has the right to ask a public servant. I think due diligence, if you have a poor fiscal person, I think they should be booted out of office. I think that's why half of our federal government should be, both Republicans, Democrats, and Libertarians should be out of office because of poor fiscal conservatism. So anyhow, thank you guys. Just want to clear the record, and once again, thank you.
Commend you for the grace that you gave.
Well, and, I did dig into, I always dig into our own candidates, and the only thing I could find that I saw as a personality flaw was a fan of Auburn. So, that's, yes.
Maria Rehnquist again. Thank you for the clarification, Mr. Bittinger, that that's not you, that's your dad, and I applaud your honesty. And yeah, I'm glad that you clarify the name. So welcome to the Woodbury County Board of Supervisors.
Mr. Supervisor Ung asked if you would want to apologize for Dan for putting his name through the mud. Is that a characterization that's accurate, Supervisor Ung?
Well, the clarification is the same like an apology. Thank you for the clarification and apologize. It's the same name and he's the second, not the first. So,
I'm
but
fairly
he-
certain that's a matter of public record, though.
Yeah.
All right, any other citizen concerns for concerns round two?
Deb Main, 1026 Charles Avenue. Pipelines are destructive by their nature, not restorative. Let's focus on the hazardous CO2 pipelines proposed to come through our county. Liquid CO2 is labeled toxic, asphyxiating, and caustic by OSHA. Yet the pipeline companies say the CO2 is safe. It'll just evaporate into the air. We know otherwise. An 8-inch pipeline will release, if the valves are 20 miles apart, 118 Olympic pools of CO2. We have two 16-inch pipes proposed to come south of the city. And how many days do we have southerly winds? The pipeline companies swear on a stack of your money that they will go above and beyond safety requirements. In the aftermath of Satarsha, Mississippi, the Pipeline Hazardous Materials Safety Administration, PHMSA, stated there are few, if any, guidelines for liquid CO2 pipelines. I would say that's a pretty low bar to hurdle. Denbury, the company operating the pipeline, reported that no human fatalities, but did not disclose livestock, pets, or wildlife that perished in the cloud moving through Yazoo County. We're almost at a year and a half into the permitting process, with schools, districts, cities, and counties taking a hard look at CO2 pipelines. PHMSA will take 2 years to research and then write regulations for CO2 pipelines, including emergency response and preparedness. Our county governing boards have been deluged with facts and figures, read pages of reports and emails, sat through lengthy meetings on this subject. Let's take a breath. I'm asking our county to place a moratorium on the construction of hazardous CO2 pipelines until PHMSA releases its findings. Hope you agree.
Thank you. Anybody else to be heard? Anything not on the agenda? Sure thing.
Long-winded, I guess. I'm not exactly sure what the motion was that you voted on tonight about the zoning committee.
It was
There-
just to receive the information and report from the zoning commission.
Okay, so you have not passed anything as far as unconditional use.
Well, we have a conditional use permit process already placed.
So that's in place, but you have not done any more
We
than
haven't
that.
changed anything, no.
Okay, I would too urge you to study a moratorium, so we're not stuck with these pipelines grandfathering in to any rules that PHMSA would make in 2 years. Summit is wanting to start construction in the fall of 2023. So that's gonna come up in about 8, 9 months. They're gonna wanna be tearing through our countryside out here. You have a question, I can tell. Look at your
Yeah,
face.
sorry. Are you aware of any county that successfully put a moratorium on these and has not been legally challenged or has?
Well, South Dakota has several counties that have done moratoriums. I'm not sure how they turned out, but I know they have requested moratoriums up there. No, I can't answer that.
Okay.
Anybody's been successful with that. So, but that article that I had Dan forward to you all this morning was an article, and the state of California, I don't know, I can't remember, I read it real quick. I've been working with TAG students all day today. So, yeah, I just would urge you to read that article and take it real seriously about what you can do. It's your duty to protect us as citizens, and I would hate to see Summit start plowing up the countryside, and then we have a rule from PHMSA that's different, and they can say, oh, well, we'll be grandfathered in. I don't want that to happen. It's a very dangerous situation for those of us that are on those pipelines. Another question I want to ask is, does the county have insurance against lawsuits?
We do, but I don't know the limits and/or,
Mr. Loomis? you laugh?
well, it's probably more under Melissa's risk management. But we don't have any attorney representation right now.
I noticed.
Yeah. That's in the board concerns, I was gonna bring it up.
Okay, yeah. Have asked some other groups this, and they said most counties in Iowa do have insurance to protect against lawsuits. We know there are at least 2 lawsuits right now by Summit against 2 counties in Iowa. So, I don't know, I don't think that should be a concern. Your job is to protect the people. If it costs the taxpayer a little bit more to pay for a lawsuit, I think we would all be willing to do that to protect our people. These things are dangerous. I didn't feel that the zoning commission was real educated. They seemed unsure about themselves at the meeting that I was at. They made a motion, seconded, and then it kind of hung there for quite a while. And then finally it was passed. But there were people that you could read it on their faces. They had a lot of questions yet that didn't get answered that night. So it's up to you guys to make sure you're protecting the Woodbury County citizens. So, and let's see, what else have I got in here? Okay, I'm concerned that we have the latest information too. Some of the information that was presented at the meeting the other night, I thought was outdated. It was from the decade from 2000 to 2010. Having been on the library board, I know that the library tosses scientific information after 10 years. So that information was outdated, I think. So now Dan might want to argue with me about that. But I think we need the latest information, not something that's been laying around for a while.
Where do you teach, Dag?
Pardon?
Where do you teach?
I'm retired as a teacher.
Oh, okay.
But I I judged tag program.
Oh, you judged,
Tag
okay.
projects today.
Well, thank you for your years of teaching and for that.
Thank you.
All right. Any other citizen concerns?
Doyle Turner, 2738 200 Street, Mulville. I'm looking at this from a little bit different direction. I would like the board to ask the zoning board and the staff to look at creating a resolution for their conditional use permits that would require all new pipeline owners to give access to purchase commodities from the pipeline to the property owners that pipeline crosses. We have some Supreme Court decisions, and this always comes back to eminent domain. There's a case called Kelo versus New London, in which the United States Supreme Court basically gave New London the ability to condemn property from private citizens and give it to a private developer for private profit. Now, in that decision, they did say that states could limit it from that. And in Iowa, it was limited basically in I can't think of the name of it right now. Putney versus the UIB. And they basically set up some premises that in Iowa, they need public ownership or private ownership, often of common carriers. When they denied the XL pipeline, they were arguing that they could not do that for public good because nobody in Iowa was using it. They lost that argument. Well, I'm looking at this from the other standpoint. We can use these exact same cases to say, you know what, if you're coming in and you're saying that you're for the public good, then give the public access to this. I believe that the county does have the ability to do eminent domain, but I think you could do this through your conditional use permit. And if they didn't like it, well, then you could do eminent domain against it. I don't think they'd want that precedent. But as I've sent you articles before on the value of this CO2. This is a commodity produced in Iowa, and it is a very valuable commodity, and it's going to be a very essential commodity in future fuel needs and in agriculture. We're looking at a pipeline who has zero experience. You can't even say these people are amateurs, when the real experts in sequestering CO2 is the Iowa farmer. So why would we build a pipeline and not give the Iowa farmer access to it? It just doesn't really make sense. So I guess that's the thing that I'm looking at. If we're gonna have this pipeline, let's make sure that we as Iowans can add value to our own commodity and do something with it. Is there any ability to make a motion to give some guideline to the Iowa Zoning Board?
I think that that would be something more state-oriented than Woodbury County.
The IUB is given under 479, they are given the authority to decide where pipelines go and how they're constructed. Only 476 is what gives them the actual authority as far as dealing with customers and those things. They didn't get that.
But I'm just saying, if we were to try to put teeth in there, it says, okay, 25% needs to be able to be accessed by Woodbury County companies.
I don't think you'd have to put a qualification.
Right, no, I'm just saying, we don't have any teeth to actually enforce it because, you know, per PHMSA and all these others, they're claiming they have this.
They have part of the authority, but they don't have it all. And even at that, you still have, because of Kelo, Woodbury County could condemn that access to that pipeline based on public economic development.
Sure.
So if you have the ability to condemn that pipeline, access to the pipeline, I should say, then why wouldn't you have the ability to make a zoning ordinance to do it? It's cheaper, it's more efficient, and you actually would get 2 bites at this apple.
I just don't know.
Any other questions?
I would want to have you walk me through that.
Oh, I'd be more than glad to, because it actually gets a lot more complicated than that. It actually goes clear back to the fact that the Iowa Constitution doesn't actually give them, the word utility is used in the Iowa Constitution, but it's used as a verb, not a noun. But they have taken it as if it is a noun.
The one aspect of the argument that you're making that I think that I'm following is that if these things become a reality for landowners in Iowa, in spite of whatever steps are taken by counties, state officials, commissions, departments, whomever, if they become a reality, you're suggesting that are there some steps that can be taken now in order for some of the value of that substance that's being transported for private landowners to gain access to the value of that substance, I think is
right
what you're suggesting.
So that we can add value to it, so we can have economic development.
Yeah, I think
from it.
that's a really
Well, I
that's
think,
a thought worth, I think, going down and exploring further.
I think we can all agree that nowhere was IUB developed to help somebody have a monopoly over a commodity. And that is essentially when we're only giving, I mean, let's face it, if this is the case, you know, maybe Mid-American only wants to sell to one person too.
Right.
And we shut the heat off on everybody else.
Well, I kind of feel like maybe some of the attitude and sentiment towards wind energy would be different if 10% of it maybe went to their rural co-op or, you know, back to their own property.
The co-op doesn't pay taxes, so the tax credits don't do them any good.
But, all right, well, I think
Could we consider that at some point?
you know, obviously it'd be something we'd have to look more into and have legal that, you know, can also designate a clear path to it.
Okay,
You know.
I appreciate it.
All right, thank you. All right. Anybody else to be heard? I know we got to get moving here.
I have one more thing to add. There's a hearing coming up on December 13th with the
If you could step up, the public won't be able to hear. Thank you.
There's a hearing, Gail Palmquist, Lawton, Iowa. There's a hearing coming up December 13th at the Iowa Utility Board, and they are the hearing is going to be about who has the ultimate authority, the feds, the state, or the county. And there are multiple lawyers that are going to be at this hearing and other groups that have already entered their briefs with this. So I think it's important that we pay attention to what happens at that meeting and see. I can't make a prediction. I hope it's the county has the ultimate authority, but we can't say that until they've ruled on it. So, but it would be an important meeting. So don't make any decisions before then. Thank you.
All right, so moving on to board concerns. Anybody over here? Go ahead.
So we received an email from Joshua and about the appointing people to the commission.
Yes.
Do we have some names, or do we need to keep putting our head and pen to paper?
That is also on my list of board concerns because we did actually get a forwarded letter from an assistant attorney general from the state of Iowa saying, as you may be aware, the DOT has identified certain deficiencies in the makeup of the 6B.4 Compensation Commission list, which precludes the state from condemning certain Woodbury County property for public highway purposes. Please see list and letter attached. I understand that the DOT first alerted the county to this issue in May of this year and still has not been fully addressed. If you could look in to see what may be done to remedy the situation. And of course, he says, Joshua says, under Iowa Code 6B.4, the board shall appoint the 28 members of the commission each year. So it looks like we don't necessarily need, people willing to come up and apply and volunteer for it, although that's ideal. We have not had anybody do so, despite repeated requests, both on the news, on the radio, and in board meetings. Nobody has applied. We need ag property members, city property, real estate brokers and sales, and persons with knowledge of property values. And I hate to say it, but a list of people that might be good is from our past few meetings, individuals that have been involved and present in meetings. At least they have a history of showing up to things, which is better than a lot of people out there. I don't know any way else to get names unless you guys have a lot of friends that want something to do out in the county. But it is pretty important because they determine land value in situations where eminent domain is discussed, and we will not get any DOT projects done, which I know we have some off of Highway 20 looking to get done, and we need those positions filled.
And you need 28 of them?
There are 28 total positions. I have a list of...
Can they serve on multiple ones? I think there's 7.
I think that you could. Let's see. Okay,
Isn't
I
there
had that
4
list.
of 7, a 7-member thing, or a 7 of 4, a 4-member?
7.
What's that?
4 panels of 7 people.
Okay. Can they be the same? Like,
I do not know that.
Do they all have to come from rural Woodbury?
Some have to come from city. So, but most of them will have to probably be rural. Under Category A, owner-operator of ag property, we have 1 person. And if any of you are Leo Yoakum, you are already on there. Category B is owners of city property, is G.R. Bachelor Jr. Okay, and Ruth Groth and Anthem. And then under Category C, licensed real estate salesperson or real estate broker, we have Tori Jackson, Colleen Baker, and Anita Small. In Category D, persons having knowledge of property values in the county by reason of their occupation, we have Patrick Curry, Doug Lehman, and Linda Matheson. We probably even need to make sure all those people are still residents. Okay. All right.
is there anybody in the audience currently that would be interested? This is if there's an,
What's required?
So basically, say like when the DOT has a condemnation hearing for any individual that doesn't want to sell the right-of-way for a road project, then there's a meeting where they determine, you guys determine the value of that property that the DOT would have to pay for that ag land or right-of-way. It'd probably be one meeting in May next year. So
So the time commitment wouldn't be extraordinary.
it's not like running for the Board of Supervisors. I think Doyle Turner, he looks real interested. Yep, that's a yes, yep, I heard. But I think by January, or I don't know if we have it by the 3rd. Matthew, you're still there? And I don't know if we have it by the 3rd or by the time we do committee appointments too for ourselves. Maybe we have that done. Because it seems like when you're getting a letter from a state attorney, it's time to get moving. Speaking of letters from attorneys, we also have an email from our county attorney that, let's see here, get to it here. Attorney presence, good afternoon, gentlemen. I meant to send this prior to the board meeting, but work has gotten in the way due to the shortage of bodies in our office. We've been forced to move a few people around. Joshua is one of those bodies being shifted, It is not certain at this time how long that change will last, so I wanted you to know that the attorney's seat will remain temporarily empty until James, who assumes his new role in January, decides to go a different route. If there is a need for our presence at one of the future meetings, either let myself or after the new year, James know, and we will adjust accordingly. In the interim, please submit any board questions or needs, and we will address them as they arise. And in an email response from Joshua, and I don't know if this was sent to Dennis or anybody else that was there at that meeting, he did render an opinion that it was not permissible for the county to fund a 2080s purchase or staff for that Mobile position. What do they call that? Code enforcement officer or whatever. And then the last item I had was Michael Clayton's funeral, Saturday, December 10th at 10:30 a.m., visitation at 9 a.m. at the St. Joseph Catholic Church in Tipton, on 510 Tipton in Salix, Iowa. And I guess anybody else for anything good of the cause?
Are we gonna need to do a notice of gathering?
Personally, I will not be able to make there. I have to work.
Let's do it.
Do it, okay. All right, better safe than sorry always.
Yep.
All right, without that, we're adjourned. Thank you.